We're now going to turn our attention to painting in the Archaic period. Specifically, we're going to look at vase painting. If you remember at the beginning of the semester, I said that we'll be looking at lots of sculpture and lots of architecture. And that's because those are the things that have survived. They did paint. They painted on walls, they painted on wood panels, they painted lots of things, but we just don't have a lot of surviving examples. One of the areas that art historians look to understand what painting would have looked like are the surviving examples of vase painting. And don't even get me started on Greek vase painting, because there are so many examples of Greek vases. In this class, we don't have time to look at a lot of them. In fact, we're only going to look at one. But if you want to know more about Greek vase painting, email me. We're going to be looking at one of the best by the best. Honestly, he's one of my favorite artists of all time. And after this video, I think you're going to love him just as much because he's awesome. He was like an international superstar during his lifetime and after and still today. Okay, I know I'm building it up too much. Let's look at archaic vase painting as a technique first. As a technique, we're going to look at the earliest technique of Greek vase painting called black figure technique. And I have included a video below that goes through the entire process and the science of it. I'm not going to explain it in this video. The other video does it much better. I just will put these three elements of the process. You need to first oxidize it, reduce the amount of oxygen, and then reoxidize it to create this contrast. I'm not going to get into it, so don't ask. There's a video below, okay? So once you realize or watch the video and you learn the technique of vase painting, let's now look at my favorite of the vase painters and your next artwork. Exekias. Exekias is the artist, and the artwork is titled Ajax and Achilles Playing a Game. This specific panel is Ajax and Achilles playing a game. There's another panel on the other side with a different scene. So we're just looking at the scene here. The artist is Exekias. Now, as I said before, he was like a major superstar. People loved and wanted his stuff. The fact that we have his name indicates he had to have been extremely important, because other artists, we've looked at their stuff, we don't know their names. Artworks by Exekias, we have records of them being inherited, being part of treasure, or even taken far and away to be buried in other people's tombs. In fact, that's where this one came from. It came from a tomb in Italy. How did it end up there? Because he's Exekias, and these are prized artworks. The figures are done in black figure. So you see here the technique of ancient Greek pottery, in which a black slip of clay is painted on unpainted red clay background. It's basically indicating that the figures are done in black and the background is the red of the terracotta. Now, the scene being depicted here is a scene from the Trojan War. Specifically, it is the Greek hero Achilles, he's right here, and his best friend Ajax, and they're sitting ready for war. They've got their spears, their helmets, they're outfitted, their shields are right behind them, and they're playing a game of dice. They're resting in between battles. Here's a higher resolution image of the two figures and this composition. So Ajax and Achilles are playing a game of dice. I don't know if you've ever asked soldiers, but there's a lot of downtime between movements, and it's not unusual to try to occupy yourself with some kind of an easy portable game, like a game of dice. And that's what these two men are doing. They're probably sitting in their tent, but they are ready to act. They've got their spears in their hands, and at any second they can put on their helmets and run out the tent door. So they've stopped here to play a game of dice. Exekias helps us by labeling the two. He labels, and you can see the words here on the sides. You see those letters? So he's labeling, this is Achilles, and this is Ajax. And in the story of the Trojan War, Ajax and Achilles are the two of the best warriors fighting for the Greeks. Achilles, oh, he is fantastic because Achilles is well, his mom is a goddess and his dad was a mortal. And when he was a baby, his mother, concerned that her son was mortal, took him to a sacred river and she dipped him, his little baby body, into the river. Any part of his body that was touched by the sacred river water became immortal. Now, this process of dipping him, she held him by the backs of his ankles. It's the area that we call your Achilles tendons. Achilles tendon, it's the back of the ankle. It's because that's where she held him. That's where she pinched him when she dropped him into, or dipped him into the river. However, the process was never complete because his dad came in and he saw his wife dipping the baby in the river and he freaked out. And so his backs of his ankles, his Achilles tendons, were his only vulnerable spots. But other than that, he's super strong, super sexy, and super beautiful, and so perfect. And then his best friend is the mortal Ajax. Now, we see them here playing this game of dice, and we see what they've rolled. You see it? Exekias has given us the words tessere and trente. This is Greek for, or tria, sorry, tria. Tessere and tria. So Achilles has rolled a 4, tessere, and Ajax has rolled a 3, tria. How does this relate? Well, can you tell who's winning the game of dice? Just by their bodies. Who do you think is winning this game? I wish we were in class together because I love asking this. Who looks more upset? Who looks more relaxed? Achilles is winning. Look at how he holds his spears. They're loose, they're falling, or not tightly together. Ajax, he's upset. He's gripping his spears tightly. They're condensed. If we look at their eyes, the eyebrow of Achilles versus the eyebrow of Ajax. Ajax almost looks like he's frowning. Look at the bend of their bodies. Achilles, he's bent over this dice game, but Ajax is closer to the board. He's frustrated. He's upset. He just rolled a 3. The detail work in this is mind-boggling. Now, if you did watch the video for Black Figure, then you can appreciate the amount of skill required to create this white line detail. Ms. Cortez, I haven't watched the video yet. Okay, we'll go watch it, okay? And then come back, and to create this line work of the hair, what you have to do is you have to remove the paint, the black slip that you've put onto it. And you have to use something sharp, like a sharp stylus. And you're going to be carving into the wet clay and removing the slip. Look at how skillful Exekias is. He creates texture of hair and beards and Look at this. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Look at this. Look at this. Ah, that's the cape? Look at the amount of detail he's given this cape. It's insane. Look at that meander. Oh, Exekias, his skill, his craftsmanship, it's unbelievable and unmatched. If we look at the composition too, Exekias has provided us with a focal point of the dice game, and each of the figures bends towards that. But there's also a opposite bend or movement around this space with those shields. Do you know what I mean? It's so hard to explain in this video. I usually like to be with you and with a big screen so I can show this. The composition here, this area of the vase that he's painted this scene, he creates the bend of the figure and he echoes it with the bend of the shield so that your eye kind of bounces up and down, over and through the composition. He helps focus us on that tiny dice game, but balances it with the turn of those shields. Look at that. In fact, Exekias was the painter of this pot and he was the potter. Painter and potter. It was typical for an artist to either be the pot shape maker or the painter. It was unusual to be both, but Exekias was both, and I think that comes through in his composition of this vase. He understands not only the shape of the vase, but he incorporates the natural bend of the vase and accommodates that in his figures. So there's this beautiful harmony between the shape of the vase and the movement of the figures in the scene. Because some students are curious, they want to know what's on the other side. Here, this is on the back side. It's another scene, don't worry about it, but it's beautiful. It's great, it's great, it's great. Because I want to emphasize how genius Exekias is, let's just look at another artist doing the exact same scene, Ajax and Achilles playing a game of dice. Here it is. So technically this is your next work of art. This is done by the Achilles painter, and it's the same scene, Achilles and Ajax playing a game of dice. However, it's done in red figure, meaning the opposite. So the same technique as we saw with black figure, except that now the figures are the red of the terracotta and the black is the background of the scene. Red figure painting comes later in the Archaic period, and many artists argue it's because it's easier to do. You just have to paint the lines of detail rather than scrape or remove the lines of detail. So here we have Ajax and Achilles playing a game of dice. And then on the back side of this is the same scene. What? Okay. It was really popular to put the same scene, but in black figure and in red figure on one vase. These types of vases are called bilingual vases. Get it? Bilingual means two languages. The language of black figure, the language of red figure. I think that's fun. We don't know the name of this painter, but artists or art historians have seen similar use of figure in another painting, a painting of a guy named Achilles. And so because of that, he's given the name Achilles painter. But obviously, he wasn't famous enough to have his name recorded like Exekias was. So he goes by this name, Endokides Painter, because we think it's the same guy that painted Endokides in this one vase that I'm not showing you, also painted the scene of Achilles and Ajax playing a game of dice. But let's compare him to the great Exekias. I know it's not fair, but let's do it anyways. We have the same scene, and yet how is it different? In terms of composition, these figures bend down, but they are really high up on the pot itself, and so they become warped by the bend of the pot. The amount of detail, much more detail on Exekias. The spears. Exekias' soldiers hold their spears with the pointy ends up. These two men hold their spears pointy ends down. That's not the correct use of their weapons. And any good soldier knows to respect your weapons. So these soldiers are not respecting their weapons. These soldiers are. Okay. What else? Let's look at the placement of their legs. They're sitting on these stools here, and it does help to bring us into the dice game itself, but Exekias adds another level. How, Miss Cortez? Well, I didn't tell you what happened to Achilles. Spoiler alert, Achilles dies in the middle of the Trojan War. And he dies because his ankle is pierced with an arrow. And he falls immediately to the floor, dead. And Exekias foreshadows that event in his scene. You notice here? Look at Achilles' feet. His left leg rests behind the stool, cutting at his Achilles tendon. So it is a very subtle hint at what will be the downfall of Achilles. Does the Endokides painter do the same thing? Well, let's go back. Let's go check it out. Let's see. Does he? No! He's got two complete ankles. Okay, well maybe this guy's Achilles. Ah! No! He's got two complete ankles. There's no poetic foreshadowing of the downfall of Achilles. All of this to say that Exekias is awesome and superior. Okay, that is the end of our look at the Archaic. Bye. His ankle is his weakest point and will lead to his downfall. What we see, I'm going to go to this larger image here.